I'm 26 and male, have lived on my own for about 2 years now. I have a very small bungalow. I'm able to pretty comfortably afford it. In this bungalow, I have an attic area, and at a guess, I'd say it's about 5 by 5 meters in size. You can only really stand there in the very center. Anyway, I work the night shift at a factory, basically just sitting on my phone all night. So I usually get in at around 8. I was coming home last Monday during a heavy storm. I got into the house and went to sleep right away. When I woke up, I went on my phone and saw that I was so tired that I'd forgotten to check my notifications. I have a Ring camera outside my door, which shows me anyone who would have come into my room. Well, I saw the camera had been tripped at 7:42 a.m. I'd gotten into the house at around 8:10 or 8:15. I checked the video only to see that it was a man. He was pressed right up to the door, fumbling around with the handle. He did this for about 10 seconds until he spotted the camera. Once he did, he very quickly scuttled away. This definitely unsettled me, but it didn't entirely creep me out or anything. I got up to go make some food and discovered something in my kitchen. My back window was wide open. Of course, I instantly began having thoughts of a home invader, but I slowly began to chill out as I convinced myself I just left it open in my tiredness. The rest of my day pretty much entirely consisted of this. I'd notice a small thing that didn't seem quite right and start scaring myself, all up until a point I leave for the shift at 10 p.m. So I was sitting down watching some TV at 9 o'clock before work. I spotted something that made my heart leap into my throat immediately. Out of the very corner of my eye, I could see my attic entrance was very slowly being slid open. I so vividly remembered that I began questioning my sanity. Surely I must just be hallucinating this or something. I looked over to it and saw something that made me so much more scared. I could see fingers wrapped around the hatch, beginning to move it more. The adrenaline was really making my hands and voice shake, but I tried sounding as tough as I could. Then I saw something I don't think I'll ever forget. The hand slipped back into the dark, only for him to drop down completely. I slammed my door shut and locked it as quickly as I could. The call went through, and I was able to get on a line with the police. They dispatched officers to my house. I told them I didn't know if the man was armed or not, and the dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I could hear the man slowly walk up to my door and begin to rattle the door handle. He seemingly went through my cupboards in my kitchen as well, as I began to hear a lot of commotion. Truth be told, I don't know why he stayed. I would have just left the house if it were me, but he stayed all the way until the police arrived and arrested him. Apparently, he was a homeless man and had armed himself with a knife from my kitchen. He'd recently been seen in the area trying to get into many houses. Truth be told, I'm very frightened to sleep still. I now sleep with my bedroom door locked at all times and all my windows sealed shut. I also sleep with a knife under my pillow. I know this is really rare and not something that's likely to ever happen to me again, but I just can't forget the creepy way he dropped down from my attic. That's the story of one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the panic beginning to really get to me. I wasn't sure if I should leave the house and call the police or if I should try and yell at whoever was up there. I chose a mixture of both. I began dialing 911 and ran to my bedroom where I could lock the door. As soon as I began to run, I heard the hatch almost get torn off with the speed they sheared it, and I arrived at my bedroom door. I looked down the corridor and watched for a moment, seeing only a little slice of the blackness in my attic. Then, though, I saw human hands holding onto the sides of the ceiling and a body lowering itself. When I was a teen, my two friends, who were sisters, would always run away from home. They usually came over to my house on weekends, and then they returned home a couple of days later. One night, I drank for the first time, and the next day, I felt extremely hungover with a real bad headache. I was actually excited to know that this was what the first hangover feels like, so I just relaxed at home. One of my friends called me on the house phone, asking me to come hang out with them. She had found a new hangout spot she'd run away to, close to my apartments, and she wanted me to check it out with her. At first, I was really hesitant because I didn't feel well, but she begged and begged. So eventually, I gave in. It was kind of close to where I lived, but still somewhat far away. I got ready real quick and started walking, feeling a bit shitty. Anyway, I went to my friend's runaway home and she showed me around. It turned out she found an actual place to stay, and she had her own room there. She explained that she gave the owner of the house some stuff like food, and he let her stay there. Next, she told me we were going to hang out in a particular room. I was surprised and asked, "We? What do you mean?" She said her boyfriend was there as well, and she wanted me to meet him. She loved him so much, and he was so cute and all that stuff. So I went into the room and met her boyfriend. He was a few years older than us, maybe like 3 or 4 years. Also, in the room was a much older man with a shaved head, muscle shirt, and faded prison-looking tattoos. He looked like he'd been through some serious stuff. He was turned around ironing some clothes or something. Immediately, I felt really weird about the situation. They started asking me all kinds of questions, and I tried to be vague with my answers, hoping my friend wouldn't give them any real information. But it seemed like she had set me up, and I felt caught off guard. They offered me a beer, claiming it's a cure for hangovers, and I pretended to drink it. Then, my friend started smoking meth right in front of me, and I declined when they offered it to me. The older man became very excited and insisted I take another beer. I pretended to drink that one too. At this point, the situation was getting even more uncomfortable. The old man came over, laid his head on my lap, and I felt disgusted. I mentioned that I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave. As I tried to make my exit, they tried to block me, but I managed to escape and ran back to my apartment. In the days that followed, I avoided going back there, making excuses whenever my friend invited me. Eventually, my friend's sister told me that her sister was still at that house getting high. She revealed that during one night, when she slept over, the older man had forced himself on her. I'm really glad I didn't stay any longer at that place and kept my distance from those guys and their dangerous lifestyle. Way back when I had this summer job when I was a 15-year-old girl, there was a few miles or so away from my house. I lived in a very rural wooded area, and my parents never let me go into the woods by myself. They worked days though, and my job started at noon every day, so I had to walk to work. During this time, I chose to disobey them and walk through the woods instead of on the road. Walking this way to work would cut about a half mile off my walk altogether. So every day, around the same time, I'd walk through a very much abandoned state forest down in Deer Path for about a mile or so until it intersected a railroad track. I'd then walk a couple more miles down those tracks into town to my job. Stupid, I know, but I was 15 years old. Taking this path always freaked me out a lot, and I would always feel like I was being watched. It was shorter, though less sunny and less hot as well, so I ignored my instincts, thinking my parents' influence must just be making me paranoid. My parents would pick me up every day after my shift, unaware of this daily routine. This continued on for weeks and weeks. One day though, I'm out walking about a mile away from any houses, very deep into the woods. I see there are now 2 porn magazine pages that have been ripped out and placed on the trail facing me. They hadn't been there the day before. I was completely creeped out, as these were clearly intentionally placed, probably for me since I didn't know anyone else who utilized this area. I kept walking though. If I turned around at this point, I'd have further to go to get out of the woods, and then there was a huge hill to climb to get back to my house as well. No one would be around there to help me anyway. This particular section was a densely wooded area with brambles and dogwood rolling hills as well, so I couldn't see particularly far in any direction. Suddenly, I could hear someone else walking close by. I stopped in my tracks. I would hear them for a split second, and then they would stop when I stopped as well. As I listened even more closely, I could hear what sounded like change in their pocket. I knew it was not an animal because of the echo of the surroundings, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly where this noise was coming from. Just to check that I was not crazy, I stopped once more. I heard the exact same noise in the silence of the forest, which quickly stopped when I stopped as well. Now I knew I was being followed. My heart was racing with fear. My vision went blurry, but my instincts told me not to speak out, not to run. Just keep walking down this dense deer path further out into the woods. My gut also told me not to look behind me, no matter what. I could sense there was someone right behind me now on the deer path, but I didn't dare to look back. I'm a rather short, chubby person and always have been. Looking at me, you'd probably assume I can't run very fast. So if you wanted to catch me deep in the woods, you might assume you had a lot of time to do so. I kept on walking, seemingly deeper into the woods, because I knew the train track was just up ahead. There would be more space to run without tripping or getting caught on these branches and brambles. It was terrifying. Not looking back a single time, but something kept telling me not to. While I walked, I felt like my entire body was shutting down. It's a feeling I've never felt before or after that day. The feeling of being prey. Everything went blurry. I could feel the blood pulsing in my ears, and my heart was pounding like crazy. I just kept walking like nothing was happening. I did not turn around, but I could now feel someone 5 feet behind me, following me for a good 1/8 of a mile. I didn't turn around. Still, I didn't scream because I knew no one would be there to hear me. As soon as I got near the gravel tracks, which were elevated along a man-made gravel mound, I began to sprint. I ran on all fours up that hill, gripping on weeds to pull myself up faster. I sprinted along the tracks as fast as my lungs and legs would carry me. I could hear and see branches snapping below me in the woods. But now I was out in the sun. The woods were dark, so I couldn't see what was hidden behind those branches. Instead, I kept on sprinting. I never even saw who was chasing me, but I knew their intentions must be awful. After that, I never cut through those woods again. I didn't mention what happened to my parents until I was 18 and had moved out of the house. I was too afraid of being put in trouble or grounded. Looking back, I think that's exactly what this creep was thinking. But you see, back then, even though I was a little bit chubby, I ran cross-country and track and could run a 7-minute mile. Hills, particularly, were my specialty. I had always placed really well in the hilly terrain competitions. By no means was I the best runner or even a great runner, but I was certainly likely faster than whatever out of shape pedo creep was hanging out in the woods, stalking a little girl. It's not that I was processing this thought at the time. I just instinctively knew it was not time to run, at least not yet.